Today, I am thrilled to have Eddie Heffernan join us. Eddie has built a remarkable career in tech, bridging the gaps between strategy, development, and executive leadership. Recently, he made an exciting transition to a fractional CTO role, a path that's gaining traction in the modern tech ecosystem. In this episode, we'll dive into Eddie's journey, how his experiences shaped his leadership style, what a fractional CTO brings to the table, and how this role can drive innovation and growth for businesses. We'll also explore the growing demand for flexible tech leadership in today's fast-paced world and hear Eddie's vision for the future of tech-enabled organizations. Eddie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Eddie, what do you do today for a living?
I am a software developer and fractional CTO. And I've been a software developer for 30 odd years. And I've recently moved into the fractional CTO area, helping startups primarily. And so startups, small companies and founders, that's what I'm doing.
Very good. You have a full plate right now.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your story. Did you always want to be in technology? How did you get started in this world? And what are some of the milestones that happened through your career?
Yeah, so I didn't really particularly have an affinity for tech when I was younger. It's something that I sort of grew into and fell in love with by accident more so than anything. So when I finished school, I didn't particularly want to go to college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I basically just fell into a computer course, and that was a 6-month development and programming course. And I got sort of bitten by the bug when I was doing it because I really fell in love with the idea of coding and being able to produce something, because I found that the process of development is quite creative, and producing something from nothing. I really enjoyed actually starting from scratch and creating software and actually having an application at the end of it. I really sort of fell in love with that whole idea. And I was very lucky in that while I was doing the course, a company that had hired some people, that banking company had hired some people from that course before. So they approached the lecturers and asked if there was anyone that they would recommend that they could interview. So they put me forward for it and I got the job. And from there on, I have been working, and that was over 30 years ago. So pretty much self-taught from there on in. Any new roles I took on or any new projects, different languages, different frameworks, and learned as I went. So that was, like I say, over 30 years ago, and was working permanent positions up until 2009, and then went for freelance and contracting. So I have been contracting pretty much since 2009. So that's how I started and where I was at. And yeah, so kind of fell into tech more so than it was a decision or a predefined for me when I was younger. And yeah, so that's where I am.
Good. And tell me this, how has the technology landscape changed? I mean, everyone has seen changes, but everywhere in the world, those changes have happened in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about the landscape. How did it change over the last 30 years?
So when I started off, the number of languages was pretty limited. I mean, what you basically either did, unless you were working on something like large servers or mainframe tech. It was like from a personal computer point of view, it was you were kind of working with Java or COBOL or assembly. It was a pretty limited set of languages that you had to work with. And I think just the explosion of languages and frameworks in particular has, just it's made the landscape a lot more complex in ways because, like I say, you were far more limited when I started off with what you could do, and now, I mean, even with the likes of React, Angular, Vue, even just the front end frameworks, there are so many of them now, and so many languages out there that the it's become very, very diversified. Um, so there's a lot more. It's actually probably in a lot of ways become more complicated if you're not sort of sticking to the one path, the one technology that you're using for everything. So yeah, there's a lot more to learn and a lot more to keep up with. The pace of it has moved a lot quicker as well. So I mean, just keeping your head and understanding about all of these new technologies and um, aspects to it. I mean, even things like blockchain and AI now, obviously. Um, but the pace of it has just increased exponentially. So it's tougher to keep on top of things, particularly if you're doing work like contracting or freelancing, because you're chopping and changing quite a lot. You're going into new positions, new roles, and new projects, and those projects could be any one of those new technologies. So again, it's just keeping up with it is a lot more difficult than it used to be.
And what are the biggest challenges that you faced during your career, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I've been very lucky, actually. I've been very lucky with my career in that I haven't had to deal with major challenges. So most of the challenges I would have had to face on a sort of day-to-day basis would be getting my head around projects, getting my head around languages or coding issues, and then the odd interpersonal challenges, I suppose, within companies. I suppose when you're contracting and you're moving around quite a bit, you're maybe working in a company for 6 months to a year, and then you're moving on to another contract. It's not so bad because you're not sort of stuck in the same positions and the same people. But most of the time, the challenges I would have faced would have been, clashes of personalities or disagreements. But yeah, the way to get around those things is just to, quite frankly, just sit down and talk to people and air these things out and approach it as an adult, I suppose.
That's a good way of going about it. Um,
Mm,
and now being a fractional CDO, I like it because you actually you started contracting a few years ago, right? So you have been kind
yeah.
of an independent contractor for a while. You evolved now to a fractional CTO, but so with all of that experience, it's really, even if you just evolved to a fractional CDO recently, more or less you have been an independent consultant contractor for a long time, right? So
Yeah.
what do you like the most about your fractional CDO role?
Oh, I like it. I like a lot of it actually because the flexibility is fabulous. So because I'm not a full-time CTO with one company or one business, I get to look at different projects. I get to talk to different people. I love the startup environment and ecosystem. I think the founders and people who go out to set up their own startups are fabulous people because they're all enthusiastic, they're driven, they're motivated, and it's you get a buzz off of that. I really love the environment around startups, and the fact then that you get to talk to these people, hang around with these people, and listen to their projects and understand what their projects are about. And they're always different. So it's always, you're never sort of bored on working on one project, and every one of them will give you a different challenge as well. So it keeps you interested, and yeah, it's just talking to the people even, and then learning. You have to like I say, each project will give different challenges. So it's always interesting to have to learn new things or problem solve and collaborate with people. I think the collaboration with the people is probably the most interesting part of it.
Nice. So you get to meet a lot of people. You get to actually feed from their energy as well, and it's like
Yeah.
a feedback loop there that goes both ways. Um, Now you are jumping from one company to the other, different technologies, different industries, etc. So, how important is it to be a good generalist or technology agnostic in your role as a fractional CTO, and why?
I think it's very important because, like I say, each project is different, and different startups have different ideas and what they want to do. And it's their business, it's their company. So while I will give advice, ultimately it's their decision on what technology they use or what applications they use, or the path they want to use, go down for the future of the company. So while I will give advice and I will help them out and sort of guide them in a direction, ultimately it's their decision. So you can't impose that on them, and you have to be willing and open to working in any of the technology. So I can't specifically point people in one direction that I want to go. So my main background would be on a Microsoft stack, so C# development. Um, and that would be my preference from a sort of starting point, so that I could hit the ground running quickly. But that's that's not something I push on people, and I've have to work in other languages or other like platforms, and so being agnostic is probably the best way to go. It's the only way to go, really. So I wouldn't get into arguments over which language is better than another language. It's whatever language or whatever framework that will fit the role for the client is the main thing. And I think you have to be open about that, and not force the issue.
What other skills are needed to succeed as a fractional CTO? I imagine that, for example, learning about your customer's business quickly,
Yeah.
right? Or the
Yeah.
idea, understanding what they want to do, how they want to make money, and how can technology support that is very important. Is that important? What other things are important?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head there. Understanding the business and getting to grips with what the requirements are and what their needs are. I mean, soft skills are very important. So listening is an incredibly important skill, um, and understanding. So I mean, listening and hearing what the customer is looking for, but also understanding what they're not asking for, because you have to remember a lot of these people would be non-technical people. So they're starting a company and a business, but they're not necessarily coming from a technical background. So they will have an idea of what they want, but there are also a lot of areas that they don't know that they need. So that's where my job comes in as well, is to sort of fill those gaps and fill those blanks that the areas that they're not familiar with from technology. So to give even a really simple example, I was talking to a startup a few months ago, and they had their plans laid out, the business, what they wanted to do, the application they wanted. And I asked how were they going to register new users and new people on the application, and they hadn't given the registration, the login. They hadn't any idea of any of that. They hadn't considered it. So understanding what they're looking for, but also understanding what they haven't even realized they need, is an important aspect of it. So getting to grips with their business and understanding what their business is, and just talking to them basically, and filling in, giving them my experience and on application development and what they need and how technology can fit in with their business. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting aspect of it, but definitely listening, and being able to communicate, just being able to sit down and talk to people. And I suppose a lot of, well, the perception of the stereotype of developers is that we all sit in the basement on our own. We're all very antisocial people, but that's not reality, I think. So being able to communicate and being able to talk to them is a huge part of it.
Very good. Now let's talk a little bit about developers and how do you build teams and what do you look for in developers when you are hiring?
Yeah, so the most interesting part of I have a slightly different approach to the hiring process than I think a lot of, say, companies traditionally would have, because I'm more interested in a developer, how they go about learning, because I think that's an incredibly important thing. So how much interest do they have in technology? How do they go about learning? What interests them? Do they, do they work? Do they code in the evenings or weekends on their off time when they're not doing the 9 to 5 or whatever it is? Um, and it's talking to them. So I would be very conversational when I'm interviewing, because I find that's far more informative than, say, giving technical interviews, or you know getting devs to do write out um, code snippets and things like that. Because for me, particularly, I suppose, coming from the contracting and the CTO, the fractional CTO aspect of it, it's the ability to learn and how interested they are in learning is far more important to me. Because if they're interested like that, then they can pick up new languages and pick up um, new frameworks and new skills. And that's more important to me than, say, syntactically what they know in a language. So that would be my approach to it. And it's not something that a lot of companies seem to do, or a lot of businesses seem to do, but it's, like I say, particularly nowadays, like with Google and even with AI now, the understanding the syntax of a language and the nuances of the language is not as important to me as the enthusiasm, firstly, and how people go about learning and if they're willing to learn. You'd be surprised how many devs are still quite reluctant. They'll sort of pigeonhole themselves into uh, a language, for example, and that's what they'll do, and that's all they're interested in doing. And that, to me, isn't what I would be looking for within a team, because obviously, again, you're chopping and changing quite a bit, flipping from one project to another. So that's more beneficial to me. And I think just literally talking to people and finding out what their interest is a good way of doing that.
I love it. So you are really looking for that growth mindset, right?
Yeah,
Someone that
yeah,
goes like, hey, I don't know everything, but I know I can learn it and I'm passionate about learning.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that to me is the key. If you're passionate about learning, and you're interested in learning, and you can, show a track record or a history of that's your approach. That's to me is the key. And I think it's again with the advances such as AI and things like that. I think syntactically and it isn't as important. The ability to learn new things is more important to me than what you actually know now because you can always learn it.
Right, right.
Mm.
Um, how do you think AI is impacting your job and the industry at large?
Oh, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with AI. I think for me, it's very useful for increasing productivity. Um, there's a lot of sort of the smaller aspects or the more boilerplate type things and applications that it can use or it can be useful for. And I also like it as I kind of use it as a almost like a second set of eyes on coding. So I will use it quite a lot for it's almost like having a second developer sitting over your shoulder to bounce off and to ask questions against it. So it's for me it's very useful from that point of view. And I do, however, worry about the future because it is moving so fast that and its ability to actually do a lot of coding is improving like week on week. So it's yeah, the future is going to be interesting, I think. I think it's going to impact a lot of junior devs, people now getting into sort of development or very early stages of it. I think it's going to have an impact on that. I really do. And I think I've already seen companies holding off. So I companies like I know one for example that they were going to hire 6 developers early next year, and they're now holding off because they think they might get away with 2 developers later in the year, just based off the fact that AI is moving so quickly. So I think it's going to have an impact, but I think there's no point in railing against it either because it's already here. So we may as well embrace it and try and use it when we can. So I think it's going to be interesting. The speed of which it's being rolled out and developed is quite mind blowing, to be honest.
You talked about it a little bit, but for the audience, right? If I'm a semi-senior junior developer and I'm listening,
Mhm.
what will be your advice in terms of how to, instead of fighting in it, embracing it? Like, okay, embrace it. It's here. It's a reality, like
Yeah,
you said. How can you embrace it? You mentioned a few things, but can you expand a little bit on that?
yeah. I think so. Just I suppose using it and getting familiar with it, and to be able to use it in a way that improves productivity. So, like I say, I use it quite a bit for starting new projects. If I'm setting something up, it can quickly do an awful lot of the sort of boring work that you have to do to actually start new projects and set them up and get a lot of the sort of boilerplate stuff done. So I use it for that quite a bit. I also use it like I say, as a kind of second developer, it's like um, there's a concept called paired development where 2 developers sit down and basically code projects and they bounce off each other and talk about just the best development sort of approach to things and also catch each other and sort of code review in real time. And that's a useful sort of tool for AI that I can put code into it and I can ask it for improvements or I can ask it to review code that I've written. Um, so it's very good from that point of view. And I think just from a productivity point of view, I think we're at a stage now where we can use it for improving and productivity and getting things done quicker. And even one developer can sort of 5x their amount of work they can get done, productive work they can get done by using it. So I think if I was saying something to a junior dev, it would be embrace it, but be wary of it, but embrace it. It's there. You use it and get good at prompt engineering. I know it's the new term for the new sort of buzz thing, but uh, realistically, if you can learn how to use it to the best, use it as a tool, as an advantage, because it's very much like the old days when you could do a Google search, but how you like doing a Google search back in the day was a skill in itself to be able to find the information quickly and the relevant information quickly. And I think that's what AI is just sort of put that on speed. That if you can get the right prompt and the right approach to it, then it can be very, very beneficial.
I love it. Final, very random question to you. What do you do when you are not working?
Well, I'm quite lazy when I'm not working. So I'm very focused when I'm working. And then when I'm not working, I try to do very little. I love woodwork. So
Okay.
I've started doing a lot of woodwork. So I'll go out to my shed and I'll whittle away at pieces of wood or make a furniture. Some of the furniture in my office I actually made. And I'm currently making a dining table actually.
Nice.
So I find that very therapeutic and relaxing. And I also go to the gym. Probably not as much as I should do, but I find it's a fabulous way to de-stress.
Yeah.
And I'd recommend it to anyone, just for clearing your head, de-stressing, just forgetting about the world for an hour while you kill yourself. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Apart from that, then the usual, I suppose. I don't watch a huge amount of TV or anything like that, or movies. So when I'm not sort of working, if I'm not doing woodwork or going to the gym, I tend to code quite a bit, or at least look at new technologies. So
Right.
I'll take a look at blockchain technology, AI, anything that's sort of new and upcoming. I try to maybe not understand it thoroughly, but I try to keep abreast of all that. So I do a lot of reading and a lot of just messing with code, really.
Nice. Which goes back to the whole appreciation you have for a growth mindset and that passion and enthusiasm for learning, right? And for the
Yeah,
curiosity to continue learning.
yeah, and I think it goes back to the whole aspect, the whole history, I suppose, of contracting and stuff. And so I'll look at a lot of YouTube, which is it can be very, very beneficial if you're not sort of going down the rabbit hole of just looking at everything on YouTube, because it can be an absolute time sink. But I focus an awful lot on technology stuff. So there's quite a few very interesting YouTube channels out there for tech stuff. So yeah, that would be something I would do. And if I was talking to, it's one of the things I would ask if I was interviewing people is what do like how do they get their information, their tech information? Do they use YouTube? What books do they read? What websites do they check out? So that's all part of it, yeah.
Amazing. Eddie, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. I had a blast during our conversation, and I hope we can get to do this sometime again in the future.
Love to, love to. And thank you very much.